Welcome back to the Electric Vibe podcast. I'm your man, Harlan Hucky Austin. We got a really great show for you this evening. And before we get started, we just wanted to give some love out to our brother, J David Silva, who's not going to be able to be with us this evening, but he'll be back soon. You got Kurt and myself, we're going to hold the fort down.
Sir.
So, these shows that we've been doing recently are really great for me because it gives me an opportunity to connect with long time friends. And tonight's guest is a very special individual. As a matter of fact, Charles, Big Chick Huntsberry, and himself were really responsible for mentoring me and really helping me grow in the music industry. So I'm super excited to be able to spend some time with this individual. And without further ado, we're going to have my guy Kurt. Kurt, why don't you introduce this evening's host or this evening's guest and tell us a little bit about him?
Absolutely. It's my honor and pleasure to do so. So, Alan Leeds, our special guest today, is a legendary figure in music whose career reads like a roadmap through some of the most important moments in funk, soul, and R&B history. Started out as James Brown's tour manager. Prior to that, he was a radio DJ in Richmond, Virginia. Was a did publicity for James, and then eventually became his tour manager in 1969 till 1974, and became an indispensable part of the Godfathers of Soul's operation, learning firsthand what it meant to run the tightest ship in show business. And then from there, he had a lot of different one-off gigs with different artists, including the one that stands out, and you get this mentioned every time you're on a podcast, I'm sure, Alan. And that was did a tour with Kiss for their Creatures of the Night tour. Not long after that, he became tour manager for Prince towards the end of the Triple Threat tour, the 1999 tour. And then not only as a tour manager, later down the road, he became president of Paisley Park Records, helping guide one of music's most visionary artists during his most fertile creative period. But his influence didn't just stop there. He was deeply involved in shaping the sound and structure later down the road in the neo soul era, most notably through his work with the late D'Angelo. With an eye for talent and a deep respect for artistic integrity, Alan Leeds has spent decades supporting creative genius, helping artists translate vision into legacy. Today, we're honored to have him here not only as a music historian and an industry giant, but also as someone with a personal connection to my co-host here, Hucky Austin. And of course, I mentioned the late, great D'Angelo already. So without further ado, please welcome to the Electric Vibe podcast, the one and only Alan Leeds. Alan, welcome. And how are you doing this evening, sir?
Great. Nice to be with you guys. Hockey, always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Longtime friends. I think we've known each other. Well, we've already been doing math tonight, so it's got to be 40. It's got to be 40 years. I hope I'm not
Yeah.
not not
No,
blowing your thing, brother. I don't know. I don't know how old you tell people you are. So I met him when he was 5. Okay. But
Alan, you know what,
and Kurt,
man?
nice to meet you and
Likewise.
be with you guys to kick it for a while.
So
Absolutely.
we had Gilbert's boy on a couple weeks ago,
Michael.
and Alan, that's when I started feeling old because I remember when Michael was. I remember when he wasn't even born, and we're talking about him growing up, and I told Kurt and Jay, I was like, man, that was a long time ago. I'm an old man, but anyway, we're still standing.
Dude, every time I see Sheila, it's nerve-wracking. For the same reason. It's
Yep.
like, Michael, tell me that's not you. And,
Right.
and, and,
Yeah.
and by the way, he's a bad boy. Michael,
I
Michael's killer.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. In fact, gentlemen, and I may have mentioned this to you already, Hucky or Al, I'm going to see Sheila and Michael tomorrow night at the City Winery in Philadelphia at the Late
All
Show,
right.
because I figure that's where it gets loose and funky at the Late Show. So, you know, yeah. But
Tell him we
he's
said, hey.
great talent. Oh, I sure will. I sure will. Actually,
I don't know. Sheila's getting a little older too. You might want to think about the first show. That's second show might be.
to qualify, I saw her 2 years ago on it was February and it was a 9:30 show also. And she gives everything up, man. By the time you get to autographs, because she autographs everybody's programs, whatever.
No,
She was tired. You could tell.
dude, jokes aside, I saw her at the Dakota not too long ago, 5, 6 months ago, she was
Yeah,
there.
Yeah,
yeah.
And caught both shows the last night she was there. And second show was just as great as the first show. I mean,
sure was. Yeah,
leaves it all out there on the stage.
sure does. Yeah, incredible. So, Alan, could you take us back to your early days with James Brown? What was it like
No,
managing
it
tour?
was way too long ago. No, I will not do that. Go ahead. I'm sorry, man.
That's okay. What was it like managing the Godfather of Soul, and how did that experience shape your view of what it means to lead a band on the road?
I'm not sure it did all that. Well, to some degree. I mean, I was a greenhorn. I quit school. I was a journalism major in my second year of college, and I quit school to go on the road with Mr. Brown. And it was the first year was a complete learning experience. But I caught him. He was still in his peak years. So I was, basically diving in the deep end, swimming with the sharks. Um, it was a mom and pop business back then, though.
Yeah.
Even on his level of stardom, it was still way before the corporatization of touring. So, we did everything from go to the cities in advance and put up the posters to buying the radio advertisements.
Mhm.
And at the end of the night, you sat in the box office until 2 in the morning counting dollar bills and
Mhm.
literally got paid in cash.
Yep.
So, um, that experience was kind of crazy, particularly some of those nights where we left with a lot of cash and you felt a little vulnerable. Um,
Yeah.
but to get more to your question on a serious note, I learned to handle celebrities because I had known Mr. Brown since my radio days.
Right.
And of course, being a disc jockey who played his records on the air, he was always very friendly because, like he was to disc jockeys everywhere because
Yeah.
like every artist in those days, particularly in black music, where you didn't have television and other
Yep.
media to really promote,
Yeah.
their careers depended on disc jockeys playing their records. So he was a disc jockey's best friend. So I went to work for him thinking that same relationship was going to be what it was going to be. He didn't. He should have sat me down and warned me that, okay, Alan, this can't be
Yeah.
like it used to be. Now you're working for me. But
Right.
he didn't. So it was a little rocky at first. And I got fired and rehired a couple times the first 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
which I later learned is like an initiation in his camp. It was like you got to prove yourself that you can take getting fired and be willing to come back. Um, but anyway, to make a long story short, um, very quickly, just as a survival tactic, um, and there were guys in the company who helped teach me. I had a couple of mentors there. I was very fortunate.
Mhm.
So at any rate, I think what I left there with was basically how to handle a celebrity in all kinds of situations,
Mhm.
how to handle a band and singers and backup people, all of whom have their own personalities and their own attitudes. Some of them are happy to be there. Some of them are looking at it as a career stepping stone to other things. And some of them could take James Brown's tyrannical leadership, and some of
Sure.
them couldn't. So having to deal with all these different personalities, and then of course there's the travel side of it. What do you do when you have a show that night 500 miles away and the bus breaks down? You know,
Mhm.
it's dealing with those kinds of things. There's just the logistics of it. But it was ultimately it was like going to school.
Sure.
Kurt, before you ask your next question,
Yeah.
Alan, you talked about mentors. And really, that's what you and Chick certainly were to me and Gilbert and some of the younger guys. And as you're talking about, and I had an opportunity years ago to listen to your book, but just to see the things that prepared you for the next level, you can really see, how you really earned your stripes. And more importantly, man, I used to always wonder, it's like, how in the world does this guy stay so calm? And can he just figure out what to do next? Like it's okay, plan B, here we go. But now I can see. And I remember when me and Gilbert first came out, you talked about how spoiled we were. He's like, you guys don't know nothing about no touring. Kurt, our first tour was Purple Rain, and me and Gilbert was talking about how tough it was. And Alan and Chick would just laugh. And really, like I said, after I listened to
Yeah.
Alan's book, I really had a better appreciation on what Alan and other guys that had been doing it for a long time experience.
And let's mention that
Well,
book while we're here. There was a time, James Brown, the Chitlin
oh,
Circuit, and
I
me.
should have had a copy handy.
That's
Where a
okay.
copy is.
We'll have a picture inserted into
Okay,
this. And
so
I
I'm
will tell
holding
you,
it up, folks.
no, but it is,
But
I'm sorry, Alan. I was going to say is what I think people forget when you get to a tour like Purple Rain, you started out with James Brown and there was this kind of vaudevillian template, right? You had,
correct.
before you
Yeah.
even got to Star Time, when James would come out and do, I don't know, hour and a half, you had the dancing parquettes, which was basically your adolescence awakening, spring awakening, so to speak.
Right.
You had the comedian doing a few jokes. You had Bobby Bird do a few numbers if he had a record out. By the time you got to, you have all these different personalities you had to deal with on the road. And in the Chitlin circuit, all these different theaters and in a lot of places you'd be in the heart of Jim Crow South. So you having to negotiate and deal with all these different things, and of course not dealing with the professional promoters and stuff that you would deal with by the time you get to 84, with a Purple Rain tour. So you've seen this evolution of how concerts are handled. I mean, you were part of that evolution and certainly in pushing it forward. So I mean, when you compare to something like a juggernaut like the Purple Rain tour was, you certainly had the battleground training. Uh, could you speak a little on
Yeah,
that?
I mean, first of all, let me back up for a second because
Sure.
Hucky nailed something that's probably what should have been my answer to your first question. The most important thing for a tour manager, road manager, whatever, is to develop a way to keep your nerves inside and to show calm, particularly when shit's raggedy. Excuse the expression. It's like um, as long as you seem calm, then you can kind of hope that everybody else around you is going to seem calm.
Mhm. Yeah.
But if you show that you're panicking, then you
Mm.
run the risk of anarchy because now all of a sudden the band's concerned about whether they'll have a hotel room tonight or whether the bus is going to make it in time or whether they're going to get paid at the end of the week. Okay? All these different issues that could come up and rile people up. And you could have a damn revolt on your hands
Mm.
if you show any kind of panic. So so that's the number one thing. And James taught me that specifically. It's like the worse things are, the calmer you got to be. You got to
Mhm.
be in control,
Yeah.
and the only way to do that is to now. that means I used to carry a whole lot of Pepto-Bismol in my road case. You know, I mean, that was the old school briefcase for a tour manager was was a bottle of Pepto-Bismol, a couple of rolls of quarters for payphones because we
Sure.
didn't have cell phones
Yep.
and we didn't have production offices with long distance lines. So you had to go to the show would start, you'd go to the lobby of the theater and get in the phone booth to advance your business for the upcoming shows.
Sure.
And then the other thing was obviously an ounce of weed. So that was the road case, Pepto-Bismol, quarters, and weed. And, and maybe it should still be that way. It'd be a lot easier. But um,
A cell
but
phone and a
yes,
vape pen now.
to catch up to what you said, Kurt. I mean, Gwen always says Gwen loves slogans, and one of her slogans is the only thing guaranteed is change. Well, she's right,
Yeah.
in the sense that, um, um, nothing stays the same. Every
Oh,
moment changes something on this planet. So you gotta, I don't care what industry you're in, there's going to be evolution. I mean, in 1969, when I went on the road with Bram, no one could have imagined um, the highly technical kind of shows that are on the road today, let alone AI.
oh
And
Lord.
the idea that pretty soon we'll have artists that aren't artists, you know.
I thought that
Um,
happened in the early 80s.
yeah, well, okay, okay. Actually, in that sense, there were always those, but we ain't gonna name names.
Is it live or is it Memorex?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But
Those, those are
yeah,
Okay.
stories for
that's the other challenge is you've got to, as long as you want to stay employable, you've got to keep up with the evolution.
Yeah.
And one of the blessings of me retiring was I could stop staying up to date. I didn't have to catch up anymore. So, now I can watch the Grammys and not know who these people are, and I don't have to feel ashamed of myself. But yeah, it's been a lot of change.
Yeah. And you've been there for all the benchmark moments in that. So it's quite an incredible thing that we have you here to tell the tale and how it really was. So we
Dude,
really
all it
appreciate it.
means is that I've been lucky enough to stay alive. That's all It's like
Priority
it's
number
like
one,
I
Alan,
always, I always get
survival.
called whenever there's a James Brown story being written. I don't care if it's Rolling Stone or People magazine. I always get called for a quote, and I finally realized that that's because I'm the only one of that gang that's still standing.
yeah.
But you're still here. So
Yes, and
you
and
know,
hopefully for a while longer. I
God
still got
willing,
some things to do.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, going back to James for a moment, James Brown for a moment. He ran a famously tight ship, disciplined, demanding, almost in a militaristic style. How did that prepare you for working with other creative geniuses later in your career? And I think we kind of already hit some of that, but um,
Well, specifically for Prince,
yeah,
because he patterned himself after that.
right, right,
And they were kind of similar in many ways, in that there were days you had to tiptoe around them,
right,
because if they were
right.
in a bad mood, they might just look at the way your shoes are tied and decide they don't like you today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and you become not so much that they didn't like you today,
yeah.
but that you would be chosen as the victim, that
Yeah.
Yep.
the target for their bad mood. And,
Mm,
and
Alan, I got a question for you. So with Prince, there was some telltale signs that you could kind of know what kind of mood he was in. And for me and Gilbert and the security team, whenever he got dressed to the nines, it was going to be one of those days. I was like, oh boy, here we go. And sure enough, man, it was a very challenging day. I'm thinking because you said James and Prince were very similar. Were there any telltale signs that where you just knew it was going to be a long day, a long week with how James interacted with you guys?
You, you could tell. See, if he was on the road and I was in the office, he would call into the office several times a day.
Mm,
And it was usually, let's say he's in a hotel in Las Vegas and I'm in the office and was in Cincinnati at that time, because his record company was based there. So our tour offices were there as well. And I would spend most of the weekdays in the office, working the phone, setting things up, booking dates, et
mhm,
cetera, and then come out and join the tour on the weekends, wherever they were, most weekends, not every, but most. And he would call in the office three, four, five times a day, and he would want to know what the ticket sales were for all the shows that were coming up. Let's say we had shows Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in three different towns. He
mhm,
would want to know what the advance ticket sales were right up to date, right up to the minute. He would want to know his record sales for the day because this is back in the day since we were in the building with the record company. They would furnish us with a printout of the
mm.
sales for that day of all of his, not just his current records, but his back catalog, his older albums, and excuse me, and he would want those record sales every day. So number one, you better have that stuff sitting right by the phone.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and number two, he would usually call in the morning whenever he woke up, which was usually, I said morning, noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And again, just might pretend hypothetically he's in Vegas, I'm in the office. And you could tell almost immediately by the tone of his voice what kind of day it's going to be.
Mm,
Hmm.
And if he had had an argument with his wife that morning, or a girlfriend that morning,
mhm.
or or maybe he didn't like something the bellman said when they brought his breakfast up to the room. Who knows? He could be in a bad mood. But the thing about Brown is his moods would change like that. He'd be in a bad mood until you told him something that pumped him up. And then he'd go Donald Trump on you, stick his chest out and say, yeah, that's right. You know, Mr. Brown, there's a great article on you in the latest Billboard. Oh, Miss Leeds, do you have it there? Read it to me. You know, and he'd flip like that. So I learned real quick, just like everybody else who worked for him, is like keep stuff by the phone, keep notes,
Yep.
keep anything positive to tell him in case you're running into that tyrant and you got something to try to flip the script. Um, but yeah, he was just totally unpredictable. I
Yeah.
think Prince was more predictable and his moods lasted longer, at
Mm,
least from my vantage point.
okay.
Um, Say it Paisley, if we were off road between tours and we're just in the office on a day-to-day business day. If he came in a foul mood in the morning, I used to call Sheila and Eric and warn them because that means rehearsal this afternoon.
Mm,
Be on your P's and Q's because he came in funky this morning. And he would pretty much stay in, and no matter what you told him, you could tell him he inherited $1 million. He's going to be in that bad mood till he's finished.
mhm, mm. Alan, I had a question regarding the Prince versus James. In terms of James seemed to know geographically where every theater was in every city and every town. He was very familiar with all the different venues and was very seemed to be very hands-on in that regard. Was Prince as hands-on, and did he know his towns and his cities and the places as well as James? Was he that acute?
Not really. I
Okay.
mean, he obviously knew major cities
Sure.
and Madison Square Garden or
Sure. Sure.
the Summit in Houston or Sports Arena in LA or Universal Amp, But um, see, I think it's important to point out James Brown had been on the road. First of all, we didn't tour. We didn't
Right.
call it a tour
Right. That's
because
what I
we'd be
wanted to
on
say.
that show would be on the road like
Hmm.
50 weeks of the year.
Right.
It's just what they did. It was a job. Just as sure as if you worked at the post office or at Target, it was a job. And
Hmm.
he always looked at it that way. He never lost it, no matter how big he got, he never lost sight on the fact that it was, and he would refer to gig, he never used the word gig. He would always talk about it on the job. And in the afternoon,
Hmm.
he'd say, okay, let's break. We got to go to work. It was never let's go to the gig. It was got to go to work.
Yep.
And and I think that came from the fact that he had been on the road for so long before he really blew up. He had had a few little hits on the R&B charts throughout the late 50s and early 60s,
Hmm.
but it wasn't until around 1963, 64 that he really blew up and started moving into theaters and so on. And before that, he really played the serious Chitlin circuit.
Yeah.
And I mean, they used to put shows in all these little towns down south. He could play a month just in Texas because they
Yeah.
would play towns that you wouldn't even think would have shows,
Yeah.
places that didn't have theaters and arenas. So they would do shows like in tobacco warehouses in the Carolinas
Wow.
or juke joints, just little dance halls that maybe held 600 people.
Hmm.
And they used to drive. They didn't have tour buses. They couldn't afford that then. So they had like two station wagons, one for James and the Flames, or maybe he had a Cadillac,
Hmm.
but then there'd be a big station wagon for the band. And they were on the highway and he would drive,
Yeah.
or at least
Yeah.
share the driving.
Yeah.
So, yes, when I went to work for him, I was astounded because he had a Lear jet by then,
Right. Right.
and which was unheard of in the late 60s, the
Right.
private jet, because,
Sure.
I think maybe Sinatra had one, but nobody did that shit.
Let alone a
Um,
black artist having a Learjet,
exactly,
right? I mean, that's
exactly.
right.
But we would land at an airport, private terminal, and we prearranged to have a station wagon and a rent-a-car, just like a Hertz or Avis or something.
Sure.
And it might be, it was usually like a Pontiac or a Buick or something, or Oldsmobile,
Yeah.
you know. And he would get behind the wheel and let's be on the tarmac of, let's pick a city, Louisville, Kentucky, or Richmond, Virginia, or Chicago, didn't matter where, or Topeka, Kansas, I don't care where. He would get behind the wheel. The station wagon would stay back for the guys to get everything, all the luggage off the plane, and so on and so on. James would get in that car, and whoever else was with him, might be me, might be any one of several other people in the organization, would get in the suicide seat and we'd take off. And he might go straight to the gig, he might go straight to the hotel, or he might go straight to the local black radio station to do an interview if he thought he needed to pump up the ticket sales for that night. I mean, somebody once said the the best promoter for James Brown was James Brown,
Wow.
and and the point I'm making is when I first went to work for him, and I witnessed this guy drive around every freaking city. I mean, I was like, really, you know, but he'd been doing it for 7 or 8 years already.
Yeah.
Alan, real quick,
Wow.
I got to jump in. So you said suicide seat. We often refer that to when Prince got to drive or when Prince drove. So I was going to ask you. I know you rode with with James. Did you ever ride with Prince? And if so, who was
Of
the better
course.
driver? Who was the better driver, Prince or James?
I'm gonna tell you something. This is something that goes with the celebrity culture in our country. Somehow indulges these gentlemen with the idea that they're Superman or something, right?
Invincible. Yeah.
Because James was a horrible driver, Prince was a horrible driver, and God rest his soul, D'Angelo was a horrible driver.
Oh,
Now I'm gonna tell you
wow.
how bad it was. James was James would like to drag race with people on the freeway. I remember one time we were driving from Dayton, Ohio, back to Cincinnati, and
Ooh.
there were some brothers pulled up alongside him on the entrance ramp to the thing, and I guess they recognized him or something, or either he just felt crazy. And next thing I know, we're going down the freeway. It's like
Oh,
95 miles an hour,
oh,
and
Jesus.
I'm like, really? But okay, James was a little shaky. You preferred to be in the back seat. Prince was like you suggested, Huck. It was, it was like I was calling up my insurance before I was going to ride with Prince. It just seemed like the right thing to do for Gwen. That, and
Wow.
yeah, of course, like you, Huck, I rode with him many times. Particularly the first few years I was here, even before you were steadily around. And yeah, I think he drove kind of crazy when he
But
wanted to. But I got to finish the story. Of the three, the only one that actually got out of the car was D'Angelo.
Oh,
And we're driving in New York City, which is crazy traffic and crazy taxi drivers. It's
yep.
already crazy enough.
Oh, yeah.
And dude thinks he's in Brazil where they don't obey red lights. And I mean, he's literally going uptown on like Fifth Avenue, running red lights,
oh
and
my.
just,
Mm-mm.
finally he pulled the one red light he pulled because I guess there was cars blocking the way he had to stop. And I said, D, call me in a half hour. I'll be in my room. I got out the car, went down the steps to the subway, and took the train back to my hotel. I was like, and never again. And
Oh,
sure enough,
Oh,
several years later, he did flip an SUV in Virginia and damn near kill himself.
oh
oh,
my.
geez.
The thing with Prince, he wasn't such a bad driver. He was just distracted. So, Alan, we were driving
Right.
from the house on Galloping Boulevard going downtown the First Avenue, and Kurt, he would have his tapes. He would have them all over the
Oh,
floor in the
yes.
car.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
please.
And
I,
so he's driving. Okay, now this road from Prince's house there's no lights on. It was really undeveloped at the time.
Yeah.
And Alan, oh, can you give me that tape? I said, yeah, I get it, but I couldn't see it. And so he decides to take his eyes off the road and he's looking while he's driving, put his hands on the floor
on
looking
the
for this
floor.
particular tape. And there was water all over by his house. I'm just like seeing us going into one of these little mini ponds or whatever.
Right.
Most terrified thing ever. And I told Chick
Wow.
after, I was like, I'm not riding with him no more. I'll meet him down at the club. But yeah.
Oh, my God.
Now, to
Anyway,
think
Kurt.
about the tapes, and it's funny because he used to worry about all the bootlegs and everything. And dude,
Right.
Kurt, Hucky knows this. I used to occasionally, and again, this is the first couple years before, quite honestly, before he was rich, before he had a lot of money and increased the staff and so on.
Yeah.
And occasionally there'd be a situation where he would just say, hey man, he would be going to California or something, and for whatever reason, he's meeting chick at the airport. And he'd be like, hey man, drive me out and take my car back to the house. Right?
Mm.
This was the black Beamer,
Mm.
um, his first Beamer. And when he drives, go to the airport, he'd get out and chick be waiting for him, and I'd pull out for the car. So one time the sun is glaring, and I pull the visor down, and I think about 10 cassettes fell into my lap from the visor. And let's don't even talk about those that are on the floor, on
Yep.
the back seat. I mean, it was like a library. You talk about Prince's vault. Shoot, it was in that car.
It was in the
It
Beamer.
was absolutely
The first of all,
ridiculous.
Beamer.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering now. I know BMW's the Blaupunkt cassette brand that the cassette decks that they had there. My parents had a 320i, 1983 20i, and that
Okay.
sucker, that Blaupunkt chewed up more goddamn cassette tapes than I could ever remember. I wonder if he ever had that problem with those because they
Well,
were
I'm
horrible.
pretty sure he had a custom rig in there.
Yeah,
Oh, sure,
He
right,
had
Alan, he
like a
had that
studio
Alpine.
worthy
Remember
system.
he had that
okay,
Alpine. I
okay,
remember
Right,
that.
good. He's
right.
smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, my goodness gracious. And any of those cassettes ever fly out the window? I mean, did he ever
Yeah,
go,
it's
"Oh, this is
ass
crap"?
Prince.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I know that we got accused of tapes be missing, but like Alan said,
Oh, yeah, I know.
He had them all over the place. I remember when I first started, and we'll get into some of these questions a little bit later, Alan. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
my job was just to wash his car and cut grass. That's what I did to start working with Prince. And so I would take the car to the car wash, and his tapes would be all over the place. He would also have cash everywhere, So I
Oh,
stack his tapes up neatly. I put his cash in. Like one time, I don't know, it was about $1,500 in a very weird spot in the car. So I got back to rehearsal after I washed the car, and I gave it to him, and he had that dumb grin on his face, and he's like, "Oh, I see it's all there." I'm like, "Well, of course it is. What do you what do you mean it's all there?" And then after that, because I wasn't working permanently at the time, I was just helping chick out. But after that, I got the job.
mm.
Kurt,
Dan,
how
see,
about you?
that's just my luck. Because back when I was driving his car, he didn't have it like that. I never found $1,500 in the car.
Al, I used to find money all the time, man, in suits, in his car,
Really?
everywhere. Kurt, I'm going to get it back to you. I know you're going to go ahead and hand this off to the next segment, so I'll
Oh,
let you.
sure, yeah. So the segue part. So from the strict discipline of James Brown's world to the visionary, free-flowing creativity of Prince, it's quite the transition, right? So, Hucky, you've lived some of through that era yourself. Can you take it from here and give us a little
Yeah, I'd be more than happy. And as you've already seen, Al and I have already kind of bouncing back off memories.
oh,
But
I
Alan,
love
I
it.
was taking some notes. There's one thing that I don't remember. I'd like to know, how did you and Chick meet? Because I know Chick worked for Kiss. Were you guys would Kiss at the same time or
No,
no?
no. I met Chick at the first gig that I did with Brent.
Okay.
Because I came in the middle of a tour, and actually I was on the road with Kiss. That tour ended, and literally got on a plane and went directly to the 1999 tour. That both by coincidence, both tours were on the West Coast.
Oh,
In fact, I played Phoenix with Kiss. I think it was like a Thursday night, and I was back in that same arena Saturday night with Prince. It was kind of crazy because it was the same limo driver when we got off the plane, and he just did a double take because he's like, "Wait a minute, weren't you
you
just here?"
again?
But yeah, exactly. I was glad I tipped him when I was with the kids. Otherwise, wouldn't have been too good. But no, the first gig was San Diego, and I'll never forget walking up the ramp because I didn't know anybody except Tom Marzullo.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. You
Uh,
did know Tom.
Um, and he was the connection because he was the production manager for both tours. So he was the hookup.
oh,
And he had, Jamie Shoup had come to our show at Universal Amphitheater and interviewed me on Farnoli's behalf. And I guess she liked what she heard. So next thing I knew, Farnoli called me and he hired me and said, meet us in San Diego. So, okay. So I walk up the ramp, and again, the only person I know is Marzullo now. Here's the trip. Um, the Kiss gig was a suit and tie gig. They required their reps to where the bodyguards and travel manager, everybody, to wear suits and ties at all times while traveling or at the gigs. So that's all I had on the road as for wardrobe was Madison Avenue type pinstripe
Yep.
suits.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not talking fancy suits. We're talking conservative suits, right? And I walk up the ramp, and of course, first people I see is Billy Sparks and Quentin Perry, whom I don't know. I knew of Quentin, but I never met him. And of course, they got purple sweats on. And I go further up the ramp, and everybody else got purple sweats on. And they're looking at me like I'm the tax man. Like, who the hell is this dude, right? I mean, they got like, oh, who is he? Jeff Sharp. Marzullo introduces me to Jeff Sharp, who was one of the two tour promoters. And you can just hear, as I'm walking away, I hear him talking to Quentin Perry. And I say, well, let's see how long this dude lasts. It was like they're taking bets already that I'm not going to last a week because
Yeah.
I do not look like I belong in this camp. And I did it. Um, but and the next morning we had to fly to Phoenix from San Diego to Phoenix, and we were flying commercial and as you say, triple threat. So Morris and the Time were there, Vanity and the Girls were there, and of course Prince and the whole band. Um, and I'm the new guy. So I get on the plane and everybody's just looking, like, who in the hell is this guy? And I don't know if some of them already knew who I was from the night before or what, but it was uncomfortable because it's like, you're new and you don't want to stick out too much. It's like, they're gonna look because you're new, but
Right.
you don't want to be like a walking billboard for something foreign. Like it was like I was from Mars. But I met Chick before the show, the night before in San Diego. I talked to Steve, and I'd already realized that I needed to get some direction about travel, the future, like hotels for the last cities on the tour, and so on and so on. And normally, what I would do is go to the artist and ask, "What do you have a favorite hotel?" and so on and so on. And Steve said, "Whatever you do, don't approach Prince. Wait until he's comfortable with you. Just
Mhm.
deal with him through chick." And I said, "Okay, who's the chick?" I'm thinking he means some girl, right? And he's like, "No, he's that big guy with suspenders on back there who you need him to be your friend." So I'm like, "Okay, this is going to be interesting." Big chick and the guy with the three-piece suit. It was like,
God.
this is so that was our first meeting. And God rest his soul, you'd have to ask Chick what he thought. But but we connected, and I just said, I know I said, you know, uh, I have some questions I need to ask Prince. Chick, should I go in there before the show or after the show? It was. I don't even think it'd been sound check yet, so I figured it was safe to approach him. And Chick said, "No, buddy, don't go in there asking them questions." And I said, "Well, I need the answers. Can you give me the answers?" And he said, "Not until I talk to Prince." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I can shortcut that for you and take it off your plate." And he's like, "No, see, here's the thing, buddy." He called him up, buddy.
Right, right.
He said, "Here's the thing, buddy. If you go in there asking him them questions, he's going to think you don't know what you're doing."
Mm.
I said, "Okay, all right, okay." And of course, I had heard how difficult Prince was. I think I was the third or fourth road manager of the tour, so
Yeah.
that spoke for itself. But yeah, Chick, it was like made sure we became friends real quick,
Yeah.
and we knew some people in common, and that always helps. And I think Marzullo kind of went to bat for me and said, "Chick, this dude's okay."
Yeah.
Um, So
Yeah.
so that was it. But it was a good, I mean, when walked them to the stage that night, Prince did shake my hand and mumble something that I couldn't understand. But but it was a good week before we really had any kind of a conversation.
It's really interesting because that's what happened with me too. It takes quite a little bit of time before he'll talk to you. Alan, I think I had been working for about 3 to 4 months. And one day I was outside of the dressing room and he came out and he said, Hucky, and I'm freaking out because I had never heard him say anything to me.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, and he's like, "You are Hucky, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." So it's really funny to hear that a lot of us had that same story. What I wanted to ask on my next question is, like you and anybody that's really close in that circle with Prince, lots of conversations with him. Some, you remember well, and some have been long forgotten. But there's a couple times that will probably stay with me to my grave when Prince was really, really vulnerable, and he just shared, his real feelings, and I didn't see that too often. And one, Alan, was we were coming back from the Euro or the Asian tour in Tokyo, and we were all excited about going to the state fair. Everybody was all excited, and I was behind him, me and Gilbert, and he says in the most innocent voice ever, he says, "I wish I could go." And my heart just melt, man. And then me trying to be a fixer because Alan, like your conversation with Chick, all of us were fixers. If you couldn't fix stuff with Prince, you wasn't going to be around long. And so I'm like, well, yeah, man, we can make that happen. And Alan, as soon as I said that, I was like, what did you just say? Because now, I'm
Right.
thinking about Prince at the Minnesota State Fair, the biggest
Mhm.
state fair in the country. And he just looked at me. He said, that's not possible. But that moment, man, he was just so vulnerable. And so years later, I think about a moment that you had, when I first started. And I think we were at the Westwood Marquee, and you guys were going to the Purple Rain premiere over at Man's Chinese Theater.
Right.
And I'm on the walkie-talkie. I don't know who I'm talking to, if it was Chick or you or whatever.
Chick.
But tell us about that moment and on how he was and just what that was like for him and then what it was like for you.
Well, I think first we should point out for those who don't know that this was the official premiere of Purple Rain, the
Yep.
film. So this is the result of all the dreams and hard work and dedication and ambition and problems along the way. Everything Prince had gone through in the previous few years leading up to this moment. And now his ass is on the line. Either this is a hit or a flop. We didn't know yet.
Right.
So he had reason to be emotional. I mean, any one of us mere mortals would have been scared to death. But,
Yeah.
um, so we all come out. We had separate cars. We had a car. We had like a parade of limos. Hucky, you were already at the theater.
Yep.
Um, and I guess Mike Gilbert were, at any rate, sent you guys ahead to advance it because we didn't trust any of the MTV people. We only trust Huck and Gilbert to give us a lowdown as to when, because we timed the cars pulling up to do the red carpet in front of the theater so that the band would come. The girls were in one car, Mark was in one car, and then Bobby had a car, Matt Fink had a car, and they each had their girlfriends, soon to be their wives, so on and so on. And Gwen was in one of the cars, I think, with the Rivkins. I don't know which of the cars. And I was in the car with Prince and Chick, and Murray was driving. So Chick was in the front, and I'm in the back seat with Prince. It's just the four of us. And the idea was that obviously his would be the last car to pull up, but and Chick would be talking to Huck on the walkie-talkies so that the timing was perfect, et cetera, et cetera. So we're getting close to the theater, close enough to be in walkie-talkie range, and we pull over on a side street to wait for Huck to give us the gung ho to, okay, it's time. And all of a sudden, the walkie-talkie's making noise, and I see that Huck is talking to Chick, and Chick's in the front seat. And Prince and I couldn't quite hear what Huck was saying over the walkie-talkie. So once Chick put it down, Prince said, and his voice was kind of broken. It was strange. It made me turn. He said, what did he say? And Chick was smart enough. What Hucky had told Chick was like, man, you won't believe this. Every star in the world is here. And he was naming stars. And, like
Yeah.
this is the biggest thing in the world. There's 1,000 kids and bleachers across the street screaming. And it's madness. He was right.
Mm,
So Chick just turned around and he said, everything's perfect.
Mm.
mm,
But it was the way Prince said, what did he say? And he's grabbed my hand, and his hand was shaking. And for that moment, it was like this was Prince Rogers Nelson back in school in Minneapolis dreaming, right?
yeah.
And I realized what was going on. And I also realized that this was a moment that he's going to eventually be embarrassed about.
Mm,
So I just held his hand until he got cool.
mm,
And then after Chick said, oh man, he just said everything's perfect. And then Prince caught himself and he got snarky and said, it better be. So that mood came and went very quickly.
mm,
But it was a real eye opener. I don't know what I thought because who wouldn't be feel that way in
sure,
that situation?
sure.
But he's so stoic all the time that it just really caught me by surprise. I
Mm,
was really stunned. And then he said, "Okay, Alan, you get out and walk around because he didn't want me getting out of his car in front of the red carpet. That didn't make sense. So the idea was that I would then walk around because we were just 2 blocks from the theater, and I
mm,
would walk, not run, to the theater and catch up with Huck and be in front.
mm,
And once I was there, they would pull around, so on, so on, so on. But that was easily the most vulnerable I felt him probably ever. There were times when I was running the record label and he was going through his changes with Warner Brothers,
mhm,
where he was kind of a regular guy for a little while because he was so frustrated. And we could actually have discussions that would usually turn into arguments because
mhm,
he didn't really want to hear what you had to say. He just wanted an opportunity to vent his own frustration. Um, but there were times like that when he was like, I mean, there was a time, and I've told this story before, so
yeah.
those of you who've heard it, forgive me, but um, he was really ahead of his time with the idea of using the internet to sell music.
Mhm,
And this is I'm still there, so it's probably around 1990, give or take a year. And he was like, okay, he had an album that he wanted to release, and it was too soon over the last album. Don't ask me which one, I can't remember.
okay.
But once again, Warner said, no, it's too soon, you got to wait. And he got angry, and he was like, Alan, we got to figure out how to release this music ourselves. He's like, I'm thinking we should do late night TV commercials. and you can be the pitch man, and you can be on TV talking about how great a record is, and every home should have it, and so on. I said, Prince, I can't do that. Warner pays half my salary. Paisley Park Records is a joint venture. There's contracts,
Right.
and you'll be in violation of the contract.
Right.
And I can get sued. And I'm not like you. I can't afford to get sued.
Yeah.
So we went through this whole, and see, now you sound like one of them. You sound like a suit instead of a creative person. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I sound like I got some damn sense. So then finally he says, okay, I've got a better idea. We'll start our own label, and it can be your label. You can have another label beside Paisley Park. And I said, no, I can't. Warner's is paying half my salary. I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's So then he says, well, then I guess there's nothing else to do but call it Gwen Records. And we'll put my album on the Gwen label. Do you
Oh
think
my
she'd mind?
God.
What I'm like,
Wow.
Oh
Okay.
my.
and I'm just like, I don't believe I'm here. I wish I had a tape recorder to record this conversation. It's so ludicrous. But of course, he was frustrated rightfully because
Huh.
he hated holding on to music when he
Yeah.
really wanted something out. He
Yeah.
didn't care about the formalities and the marketing plans of record companies or any of that shit, or how much the market can absorb from one artist. He didn't want to hear none of that. It was like it was a newspaper. His music was a newspaper, and he wanted his fans to read it before it was old news.
Yeah.
That's the only way I
That's
can put it.
a good
And
analogy. Yeah.
um, so I understood that.
Mm.
The problem was it was 10 years too soon
Yeah.
before you really could just stream stuff yourself or put out random singles or EPs and configure things any way you want to instead of just doing it strictly the way the record company, if you want to put a 3 record set out, there's nobody going to tell you no, you know. But, he was ahead of his time in that sense.
Absolutely. And it comes as no
And of course,
surprise. Yeah.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, Alan, to piggyback on what you just said, it comes as no surprise that he's the very first artist to sell his music on the internet, aside from Todd Rundgren, who also was equally as
Sure.
forward thinking when it came to music being released on the
Yeah.
internet, what have you. So you get to the Crystal Ball set, not the one that he recorded in the 80s, but, and he's distributing. Of course, there were, as we all know, there were a lot of distribution snafos. I mean, I think that Crystal Ball set had ended up in the Best Buy stores
Yeah.
well before people who had ordered it on the internet got their own version of it. So there were some perils and pitfalls that he experienced with that, but he still holds the title of the very first artist to sell music on the internet. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
which is dope. But
yeah,
here's the thing, Kurt,
yeah,
and this was the frustrations that a lot of us would have with Prince
yeah.
and his impulsiveness.
Mm,
He was an artist. He's not a business person.
right.
Okay.
Mhm.
And that's fine if you let the business people conduct the business. Problem was he wanted to be both.
Mm,
And in that sense, he also was like James Brown. And
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
the thing was, Prince was a visionary in terms of selling music over the internet. But as you pointed out, the business end of it, the distribution, the manufacturing, that there wasn't the professional follow through to make sure that was done properly. And I don't blame Prince, and I do blame Prince because you can't hold him accountable for doing something he doesn't know how to do or doesn't have the patience to do.
Yeah,
But by the same token, he didn't trust people enough to let them just go do it.
yeah.
So, that was the problem with Paisley Park Records.
Yeah.
Mm,
Alan, when you
And
think
and
back,
and it's not a personal for fans of Prince who are going to hate on me for saying that. It's not a personal attack on Prince. He's a creative genius,
Right.
And the one thing I've learned from all of these guys, from Barry White, George Clinton,
Yeah.
Bootsy Collins, Larry Blackman, Maxwell,
Yeah.
is all of these creative people have a certain impatience and impulsiveness and even distrust of the business side of the music business. It just comes along. It's like an ice cream sundae. You can't have ice cream without the syrup on top, or it ain't a sundae. It just comes with the turf. It's in their genes,
Yeah.
and I've spent my whole life fighting that stuff, and nowhere more than with D'Angelo, God bless him,
Mm.
um, who was just a recluse from the business. I mean, just didn't even care if I don't have a record for 10 years.
Hmm. I got a couple more questions I want to finish up with Prince, and we're definitely going to dive into the D'Angelo.
Yeah.
But when you think back on the Purple Rain days, Alan, I mean, not the spectacle, but the human side of the whole Purple Rain experience. What moments stick out to you the most?
Ooh,
Mm.
I think really just the fact that this was undoubtedly the biggest thing any of us had been part of up to that date. And for those of us who continued in the business on that level, it's still the biggest thing I was part of.
Yeah.
You know, um, it wasn't just the only thing that I've seen that approaches Purple Rain, the impact of Purple Rain, is the Taylor Swift phenomenon,
The era story.
which I don't quite understand because I'm not a young girl. But whereas Purple Rain had a broader marketplace, but that's really the only thing where a tour just completely captivated the media and everyday conversation to the point where for the last couple of years, people have been talking about Taylor Swift. People who don't own one of her records, don't care to, aren't going to pay $5, let alone $5,000 for a ticket to her
Mm.
show, but they're still talking about her.
Yeah.
And that's what Purple Rain was like. And it, on the other hand, I think what I remember the most and meant the most to me, particularly coming from the East Coast and having grown up in the Chitlin circuit, which was so segregated,
Mm.
was the phenomenon that the impact Purple Rain had in the sense of you had all of America, black and white, listening to the same music, watching the same movie,
Mm.
and seeing nightclub scenes that were mixed.
Mm.
And of course, integration was legal by then. I mean, we're talking the 80s, so it's
Right.
not like, but the fact is that most places I lived, even New York and New Jersey, they were pretty much black clubs and white clubs. And you very
Mhm.
seldom saw a lot of mixing,
Mhm.
right? And when I moved here, went to First Avenue, I was like, where? Yo, where, Gwen and I is a mixed couple.
Right.
We moved to Minneapolis, and for the first time, we never felt looked at.
Mm.
And I'm talking about liberal ass New York, my
Mhm.
favorite city on the planet.
Mhm.
There would occasionally be some jerk, might be white, might be black, who had something to say just because they didn't like the idea of us walking down the street together.
Mhm.
And certainly in Newark, New Jersey.
Mm.
Okay? We moved here and we would go to Barley's and Club Food and see other couples like us.
Mm-hmm.
And it really blew the first time Nelson George, the writer Nelson George,
Mm-hmm.
film producer, is a age-old friend of mine,
Mm-hmm.
um, came the first time he came to Minneapolis after we were living here was for the grand opening of Flight Time. But being friends, we hung out, stayed at the house, and so on. And he was like, "Yo, what's up with this town?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like all the mixed couples. And he said, and it's white guys with black women too. It ain't just brothers chasing white girls, as a joke, but pointing out that this
Yeah.
was, and this is a sophisticated New York dude, born and raised in Brooklyn, a writer, a film producer, had been all over the world, and he was like stunned.
Mm.
So that was in the movie. Purple Rain showed that to the whole country,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe it had an influence as to
Mm.
how young people, white and black, began to listen to the same music more often.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an element of the whole Purple Rain thing that personally I was most proud of being part of. Just that we were sponsoring something that the rest of the country needed to see and hear.
Mm.
And I don't know that Taylor Swift is thinking that heavy. She's too busy trying to see if the Chiefs are going to win on Sunday.
I'm going to go to our next segment, Alan, our last one. But after living through the worlds of James Brown and Prince, you were ready to step into another creative revolution, and that was D'Angelo. Kirk, why don't you take us away with this next segment?
Absolutely. So, Alan, you became part of D'Angelo's world during a time when neo soul, was redefining R&B. So, what made that movement so special, and how did it compare to the revolutions musically and culturally you'd already lived through?
Well, to be fair, after Prince, I did a lot of random tours. There are people you would know, but we don't need to name drop it. It's just that was a freelance tour manager for hire. I went back
Yep.
to that.
Yep.
And one of the people that ended up hiring me was a new artist whose first record was about to drop. It was Maxwell.
Hmm.
And he too was on the cusp of this neo soul movement that eventually, over the next couple of years, included, beside Max, D'Angelo
Hmm.
with Brown Sugar, Lauryn Hill with Miseducation,
Hmm.
Erica's Baduism,
Hmm.
Common's first record, what Q-Tip was doing with Tribe. All of this was kind of happening, and it was very clear that this was a reaction to how R&B had gotten so synthesized and mechanical and boring and kind of infantile. It was like, it was no longer the music that spoke for all young black people. It only spoke to kids, and it was dummied down. And not that there weren't good records, but
Hmm.
so these were all of these artists that evolved that, within a year or two of each other, that were determined to break the formulas, push the boundaries, and at the same time incorporate elements of hip hop into traditional old school R&B in a
Hmm.
way that had never been done, right?
Yeah.
And most of that was done in the studio through production techniques and so on. And you go back to the influence of J Dilla's beats and so on, which was
Hmm.
so widely used by people like Erica and so on. So I did Maxwell's first 4 or 5 tours,
Hmm.
and then the last of which was over. So I'm back on the unemployment line again, and I got a call from D'Angelo's manager and Actually, it was D himself who called. I didn't believe it. I thought it was Maxwell playing a prank. Um, because we had grown pretty close. You know, you do all those tours, and it was from the very beginning because he was a neophyte about touring
Mm,
and really needed a father figure and a mentor and
hmm.
all of those things to help him discover his place.
Sure.
And along with a couple of other managers that came and went, we succeeded in doing that. But so this led to D. Now, he this was right before the Voodoo record. It was a couple months before the Voodoo record, which was his second album.
Hmm.
5 years, I think Brown Sugar dropped in 95.
Hmm.
And I really liked that record, but
Yeah.
I didn't know him. Actually, I met him once, but it was a very brief shake hands and, you know. Um, so at any rate, he hired me to be his tour manager for the Voodoo tour.
Mm.
And make a long story short, after a few test gigs and so on and so on, we opened that tour in March of 2000. And the rest is kind of history because what we did with that tour was this merger of hip hop and R&B. We brought it to life with live music, with a live band.
Mm.
There wasn't a DJ on stage.
Oh my God.
But yet and still you heard the hip hop if you paid attention. It was there. It
Hmm.
was there in the beats. It was there in some of the syncopation. But meanwhile, you had this incredible band that was anchored by Questlove, who had taken leave of absence from the Roots to spend a year um, on the road with G. And it was, let me put it this way, years later, I've done a lot of Chris Rock's comedy tours. And
Right.
one night we were riding from a gig back to a hotel and just had nothing else to talk about. And Chris said, Yo, Leeds, of all the tours you've done, what was the most, I forget if he asked me what was the best or what was my favorite or what was the most satisfying, but he asked me what was the most something or other. And without even thinking about it, it just came out voodoo.
Hmm.
And it was like a reflex. It wasn't like, an intellectual answer. It wasn't like I thought about, Purple Rain, Sex Machine with James Brown. No, it just came right out. And I hold to that to this day. It was musically, and Chris was like, "Word, like, what are you really?" He was stunned because he expected something else.
Thank.
And I said, Rob, did you see the tour? And he said, No, I gotta admit, I didn't. I was working and working on a film or something,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
never caught up with it. And I said, Well, then don't ask me.
Well, I mean, Chris was such a huge Prince fan. He named one of his comedy specials Tambourine after
Oh yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
Prince song.
yeah. No,
So we
no,
know he's a huge
he's
fan.
yeah, he is one of the top five Prince fans on the planet.
Yep. Yeah.
But
So,
I mean, he knew D. In fact, he used to come to the studio and hang out with us.
oh
So
wow.
I mean, he was certainly friendly and supportive of D. Had him on
Yeah.
his HBO show
Sure.
2 or 3 times. So that really shouldn't have surprised him that much. But
Right. And
um,
this was at Electric Lady Studios that you'd be hanging
yep,
out? Yeah.
yep.
Uh,
Yep, yep. It was a very special time, Erica, because all these people were working on their second albums. Common was in one room working on Blackwater. Uh, Erica was working on Mama's Gun, and Dee was working on the last of Voodoo. And Amir Questlove was like running back and forth from one studio to
sure.
the
Right.
next
Yeah.
because he was kind of involved with all three projects. He was like the godfather of that. And they were exchanging ideas. I mean, D'Angelo did a track for Common's record. And then when he heard it, he said, Oh, that's too funky for Rashid. I need that track back. So they're trading tracks. I mean, this camaraderie of these people who shared the same creative juices,
Yeah.
but all sounded totally different. That's what was so beautiful about it. Is and every one of them was playing a role in kind of reinventing black art.
Mm.
And not that Prince wasn't, not that James Brown wasn't, but I think maybe because it was in the later years of my career that made it even more special because when you're younger, you kind of expect to be with something dope. But I had done a string of in my new book, I called it the oldies section of my life. I had done a string of tours after Prince, um, with whoever would hire me. We did a good run with Sheila that I was really proud of because it was really artistically very special. But I did a month or two of Morris Day, and it was like I was doing the comeback tours. It was Morris had just put his version of the time together, and
Yep.
he hadn't been on the road in several years. So Billy Sparks and I took them on the road, reestablished Morris Day in the time as a touring entity. So that was good for 3 or 4 months, and that got old. Then I got by happenstance walked into a Barry White situation. Ended up doing one of Barry's last tours,
Mm.
but and all of those were have precious memories and they're shows that I was very proud of, and nothing but respect for those artists. But then along comes Maxwell, and it kind of like at a certain part of my career where I'm starting to see the end of the rainbow, just by
Hmm.
virtue of age, and starting to wonder if like I'm too old for this and so on and so on, because you got to, with younger artists, you have to be able to relate to them.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe they want a father figure. Okay, cool, you can do that. But primarily, if I'm going to sit in the car every night with D'Angelo or Maxwell and we're going to talk music, I got to be able to hang.
Hmm.
So part of me was like, okay, is this shit over? But Max forced me into the now. And I think that maybe that's I mean, it shouldn't be about me because the music was about them, but I think that that was a metamorphosis that I was personally going through. So it kind of was really special to feel that I was part of that young movement that was contributing so much to Black art. Was it was like a privilege, man.
So it helped bridge a gap from what you had, with the artists that you had worked with prior, and this that there was a fresh spin on what they were doing that kind of helped bring you into a different.
Listen, I never fooled myself for a minute. There is one reason I got hired by Maxwell and D'Angelo, and that was I can sit up and tell them some Prince and James Brown stories all night.
Sure.
That's what they hired. They hired a storyteller. But then we got out there and they realized they got a little more than that. And then because
Wasn't your
Dee and I
first
were
rodeo.
yeah, Dee and I were together for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah.
Um, Only 2 albums, but but
Yeah.
those two albums got more music and more creativity in them than somebody else's 10 albums. So,
Yeah.
it's God bless them. It was what it was.
Yeah.
But we took that music and his bands all over the world. I mean,
Yeah.
to the usual all through Europe and of course Japan, and Australia, and New Zealand,
Oh man.
and 2 trips to Africa, and
Oof.
played in the Caribbean. And it was Dee was a very special person, a very spiritual person, and
Yeah.
and a troubled soul. But who the hell isn't?
Yeah.
And died much too young. It was This
Yeah.
last few weeks has been
I'm
pretty rough for some of us.
I'm sure. Well, heartfelt condolences to you, and certainly to his family, and what have you. Um,
It's in the genes. His
yeah,
three kids all have the goods. I mean,
yeah.
they can all sing and play. It's scary.
Wow. Well, when's the last time you spoke to him at any length?
To D,
Yeah.
day and a half before he died.
Wow.
That was Questlove called me about 5 days before and said, "Man, you better get on a plane." I mean, we knew he was sick and we
Yeah.
knew that
Oh,
this
okay.
was
Okay.
fatal.
Okay.
And before that, I hadn't talked to him since June because at first it was like nobody took it seriously. Then it was like, oh, and Questlove would keep me up to date. Well, he's fighting it. He's doing better. Blah, 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 blah. But then in October, he took a turn for the worse, and I talked to him on the phone. Then we texted back and forth for a while. And then Amir called and said, "Get on a plane, dude." And so I was there that week, and
Mm.
I'm not going to claim to have been at his side when he died because he died at 6:30 in the morning, and I was in my hotel room. But I got a call at 7 o'clock, threw my clothes on, and went over there. And
Mm.
um, actually, by a stroke of fate, two of his homies who had been grew up with him in Richmond but had worked for him all through his career were there when he passed.
Okay.
His girlfriend, who was also a singer in his latest band, was there, and his guitar player was there.
Mhm.
And they actually sang him out. They were around him singing his songs as he passed and when
Wow.
he took his last breath.
Jesus.
And we had the funeral just this weekend in
Yeah.
Richmond. It was quite something. Stevie Wonder was there and sang a
Yeah.
cappella.
Yeah.
He sang two songs solo and then one with the Roots. Well, basically the D'Angelo bands
Sure.
combined.
Sure.
You know,
Right.
um,
Well,
and who else was there? Maxwell was there, and Lauryn Hill, and a whole bunch of people.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
doesn't matter. But it
but
was
you
it
two had
was
that common connection
funny.
in Richmond, Virginia. Did you often speak about your connections about Richmond
Totally,
with the? Yeah, I'm sure you did.
totally. Matter of fact, when he interviewed me before he hired me, um, somehow it came out because I I don't think I knew he was from Richmond until that day. And when he mentioned something about Richmond, I said, "Oh yeah, I used to live in Richmond. I actually went to high school in Richmond." And he jumped up, "Richmond? Shit, you hired." He just got all excited. He slapped me five, and his D was famous for his pounds. He broke a lot of wrists. I mean, he
Mm.
could have been a lineman. It's like
Really?
he, when he wanted to slap five, you ducked. You
Yeah.
just you just turned your back. It was like, no,
Mm.
man, not today. Um, yeah, he was something.
We
Uh,
appreciate you sharing all of what you've shared with us today, but and particularly losing a visionary creative force that D'Angelo was. We certainly
the
appreciate
thing, if I've got another minute, the thing about D that I really want to share is that of all the people I work for, he was the most normal.
Mm.
And I say that in the sense that he didn't wear that celebrity shit.
Yeah.
And in fact, he was uncomfortable with if you'd be out with him in a restaurant, he'd be very keen about people looking, and it really made him uncomfortable. And he was like, there wasn't a subject you couldn't have. There was no tiptoeing in that camp.
Mm.
And that goes for the band, the security, the entire camp. Nobody had to tiptoe around his brother. I mean, you showed him his respect,
Sure.
but
Sure.
like he and I could talk about anything, any which way we felt like it. We could argue. We could call each other names. Um, he and Tristan were boys. We took Tristan on tour and put him to work and as one of the road crew.
Yeah.
And he'd disappear and he'd be off hanging out with Dee and his homies because they're the same age.
Right.
They're the
Right.
same age.
In their 50s.
Um, and when Dee was having his well-documented problems with substance abuse,
Hmm.
um, he would call Gwen for counseling and they would talk. We'd go see him in the hospital when he was I mean, his father died when he was very young, and it was clear that he was kind of looking for a father figure. And he called me Pops. I mean, it was it was unquestionably the closest relationship I ever had with an artist. And the fact that it was the last one in my career, and we ended up at a funeral in Richmond, of all places, the very place my career started, was just serendipity. It was just like, okay,
Yeah.
this is how it's supposed to end.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, Alan, man, we really
Can't
appreciate
make it
this
up.
time with you so far tonight. We got a couple more questions for you, and we're gonna wrap it up. But
You got
it's
it.
been a real pleasure, man. Describe James Brown in one word.
Mm-mm. Determined.
Mm.
Determined against all odds. I mean, I know that's more than one word, but he was the least likely of all these people to have actually made it. When you
Mm,
consider where and when he was born,
Mm.
how he was born,
Mm.
how he was raised, where he was raised
Mm.
in the Jim Crow era,
Mm.
there was only two ways he was going to be anything other than a bummer in jail or dead or working in cotton fields. It
Mm.
was either through athletics or music. And he was determined that he was going to make it, and nobody was going to stop him. Not Mr. Charlie, nobody. And I've never met a person more determined, stubbornly so, than him.
all right. In turn, we're gonna give you one for Prince. Describe one word for Prince.
Insecure.
Mm.
Yeah,
I've always thought that underneath the facade, it was all driven by insecurity, because he tried too hard.
it's deep.
He tried too hard to fight being black at one time in his career. And we know he was a proud black man. And the older he got, the prouder he became. And we know I'm not suggesting for a moment that he wasn't a proud black man. But at the beginning of his career, I believe he was so concerned about being pigeonholed as a black artist and not given the opportunities that pop artists received that he tried to play down blackness and just kind of set it aside for a minute. And there were interviews where he actually, it was said that his mother was white. And of course, we know that's hardly the case, you know, and that was way early on. Um, and certainly he tried too hard to overcome his height
Mm.
to the point where the high heels contributed to the ailments and the pain that contributed to the medications that contributed to his early death.
Mm. Mm.
You know,
D'Angelo. One word for D'Angelo.
pure, that's two words, pure artist,
Mm.
pure artist. He was about the music and nothing else. He wasn't about money. He wasn't about fame. He was about the music only.
What's an epiphanal moment in your life that you could point to? Aha, this is.
I suppose getting a phone call to come work for James Brown.
I'm sure.
I,
Sure.
doesn't get, I mean, there were other pivotal moments. Certainly the Prince gig, because, that started as just another road manager gig and then turned into 10 amazing years that allowed me to learn so much and also moved me and Gwen to a home we never envisioned we would have that we're proud of. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly changed my life, that call to come here. But, I could come up with some shit with the D'Angelo call too. It's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
there's pivotal moments.
You've had so many of them. It's hard to just pick one. I certainly understand that. Well, this has been
Dude,
incredible.
we all have pivotal moments.
Sure.
It's just mine happen to be with friggin' celebrities. It doesn't make them any more significant than yours or Huck's or any damn buddy else's.
Alan, I got one more though. And this was I've been saving this, but what is one lesson that you would love to share with your younger self?
Um, the one that comes to mind first, I don't want to talk about in public. But
Okay, fair enough.
Uh,
I'll tell you mine. Mine would be save your per diem.
yeah, I'll take that one too. I'll take that one too. I will take that one too. Definitely, definitely, definitely take that one too. No, man, that's a list
Yeah,
of what I would tell my young self. That's a list. But
mm,
having said that, I wouldn't have done it any different. I mean, there were for every high there were lows.
sure.
I mean, there were times in between tours when things were a little raggedy. You know, there was actually a time in Pittsburgh after the James Brown years, um, for a variety of reasons. I was back in Pittsburgh before Tristan was born, and then just after he was born, where I was actually driving a cab to raise money to put behind recording a band I was managing that never made it. So I
mm,
mean, there was some raggedy moments along the way.
Yeah.
mm.
So, did we hear you say that there's another book coming out?
Oh yeah.
Yes, yes. This is unlike the James Brown book. This is a full memoir, so it's
Oh,
the longer version of this conversation tonight. It's we don't have a title yet. It's for Questlove as a publishing imprint with Macmillan Books,
oh,
and it's he asked me to write it, and um, his working title is A Ringside Seat to History.
Mm,
I don't like the title because ringside seat is like, if you're not a boxing fan, what does that mean? Nobody's a boxing fan anymore.
yeah.
So I don't know. We don't know what it's going to be called yet. Although it's let me put it this way. It was finished until D'Angelo passed away,
mm.
because now I've got to go back and rewrite some stuff, which is I'm putting off because I think it's going to be a little touchy to do, but I'll get to it quickly. The book's supposed to come out summer or fall of next year, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what it's called. Who knows?
Well, I could certainly. I'm sure Hucky will echo this sentiment. If you're willing to come on and promote the book, we'd love to have you back on to promote it.
No,
Absolutely.
I don't want to promote the book. Are you kidding? Who wants to promote a book?
Yeah, right.
It's like,
What?
dude, I'm scared. I'm scared. The last book came out the month before COVID shut the
Oh
nation
well,
down.
yes.
Literally 3 weeks before the official shutdown. So the book tour, all the interviews, everything, it was like,
You don't want to
really?
jinx. I
Yeah, I
know.
don't want to jinx it.
I
It's
got it.
just like,
I
you
understand.
know. But yeah, of course, I'd be fun and honored to talk to you guys, man. I love what you guys do.
Uh,
Yeah, well, thanks, Alan. I mean, and
appreciate it.
it is so, I mean, Jay and Kurt enjoy like, me telling them, about past memories, but it's even better for me when I have an opportunity to talk to someone like yourself, and like I said, a mentor for me that really helped me grow in this industry. And I really liked how you paid it forward, man, because it's like, I think about all the knuckleheaded things that I did out there on the road, and I can still hear Chick calling me a bunch of choice words, but I really appreciate the relationship that I've had with you over the years, and I'm just very thankful. And I'm grateful that you took time to come on the show with us tonight. We really
Oh, man,
appreciate it.
anytime. I mean, you guys do this right. You do your homework and the production values. It's special because there's a lot of podcasts out there. And
Well, thanks, Alan. Jay, why don't you take us home? I mean, Jay, Kurt, take us home, baby.
That's okay. I don't have Jay's wonderful supple baritone voice, unfortunately, but if Jay were here, he always says when the universe comes knocking, you have to answer that door. So I want to say that on Jay's behalf. I know he is sick to be missing this interview, but work called, unfortunately, and he had to attend to that. But as I always like to say, once again, Alan, it has been an honor and pleasure to have you on, and thanks for the ice breaking call the other night when I asked if I could give you a phone call so we could just at least hear one another's voices in real time. So I really appreciate your time that you've taken, and just hearing the two of you exchange stories and memories. It's just an honor to be here. Uh, Once again, as I always like to say before we close every show, a rising tide lifts all boats. Hucky?
I think all of us would agree we live in very challenging times, and I just want to say a couple words. Be nice, be kind to one another. We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Peace.
peace.